Welcome to the world of chocolate. I am your host, Brian Mitchell, and we have a very special guest in the studio today. Brian Bianchi is a trained chocolatier from Ithaca, New York, and he is going to talk about his world of chocolate. Brian, welcome to the podcast. Why don't we start at the beginning? What is it about chocolate that you find so interesting and so difficult?
Chocolate, if you don't do the exact thing that chocolate needs, it's just not going to work.
So can you give an example of things that you ran into that might have surprised you when you first started out?
A matter of like 2 degrees in your kitchen, in your workspace, will be the difference between spending 15 minutes tempering your chocolate and 2 hours tempering your chocolate. The culprit is the fat, what we would call cocoa butter or cocoa fat. As it goes, if you heat it up and you melt it down and you dissolve all of the fat crystals, it's actually a crystalline form. As it cools down and those crystals try to reform, they are unstable. To prevent that happening, you have to do what's called tempering it, which is where you melt out all of the cocoa fat.
Okay.
By heating it up to a certain temperature, and that will vary between the kinds of chocolate that you're using, but it's usually between 100 and 120 degrees. And then you cool it down while agitating it and stirring it. So I would melt down a certain amount of chocolate, and then while I'm stirring it and cooling it, I'm adding in unmelted tempered chocolate to that, and the crystal sizes in those seed pieces will help the melted chocolate to start forming those stable crystals.
Really? So it follows the pattern of the seed?
Yes.
That you add to it?
And so the whole arc is raising the temperature up to a certain temperature, lowering it to a certain temperature while agitating it and seeding it. When you're doing that, you're bringing it down with the seeding. Even then, you're forming. This does all the beneficial things of giving you a better flavor and mouthfeel. When you bite into it, it will actually snap. If you go into a grocery store and you buy a chocolate bar, you should be able to take it, and when you break it, it has a nice clean snap.
So one of the things we're doing with this course is we're going to create our own molds, and then we are going to temper chocolate and then create homemade chocolates in this mold. So if somebody were to ask you what's the best way to melt chocolate at home, what would you say to them?
Melting, I like to use a metal bowl that's put over a pot of barely simmering water. I like the double boiler method.
Okay.
If you really want to babysit it, you can use a microwave. For dark chocolate, which is the easiest to temper, in my opinion, you want to raise that temperature up to about 122 degrees. It needs to be then lowered while seeding and stirring regularly. Don't be really energetic about it because you can overdo it. But then you want to seed and stir and bring that temperature down to 80 degrees. Then go back to your pot of hot water and slowly taking it on and off the hot water so you don't go too far. You want to raise the temperature to about 96.
And then how do you know it's done?
It's usually a simple dip. I take the back of a spoon and I just sort of swoosh that across my chocolate, give it a little tap to get off any extra, and then I let that sit on my countertop. If there's a cooler place, like my windowsills are cooler right now, I'll put it on my windowsill. That chocolate should set up, if it's tempered, in less than 10 minutes. And when you look at it, you shouldn't see any striations. It should all look like a smooth and the same all over it. If you see any like stripes or whatever, then your fat is not fully incorporated and you need to do some more stirring. And for projects like this, if you're going to temper, it's usually a good idea to get some of the nicer chocolate. Now, you don't have to spend a fortune. Usually grocery stores will have like the Ghirardelli baking bars. Those are just fine.
Okay.
But like chocolate chips aren't going to work.
Aldi's and just gotten, Belgian quote unquote chocolate chips, and didn't have as good a luck with that. So
Yeah, those like I'll use as an example the Nestle Toll House chocolate chips. Those are designed to go into a cookie dough, which is going to go into a 350-degree oven. Chocolate, like real chocolate, is not meant to ever get that hot.
Well, Brian, we thank you so much for all of your expertise, all of your knowledge, all of your direction, and we wish you all the best. May your chocolate always stay in temper. Thanks so much for joining us on The World of Chocolate. We look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, stay calm
and bake on.